At my retirement party, my son-in-law grabbed the microphone and boldly declared, "Forget this, old man. I built this empire myself." The crowd of 200 erupted in wild applause, chanting his name while my daughter beamed with pride. Everyone thought I was finished. I just smiled calmly, stepped onto the stage, and spoke 6 simple words. His face turned ghostly white, and moments later security was dragging him out under the stunned stares of every guest. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Irving Coleman. I'm 68 years old, and I live in Houston, Texas. Built Coleman's Auto Care from a single garage into 23 locations across the state. Tonight, I'm standing in the Four Seasons Ballroom, watching 200 guests arrive for my retirement party, and I can't shake the feeling that something's about to go very wrong. The chandeliers cast warm light across tables draped in white linen. Waiters circulate with champagne. My daughter Rebecca coordinated everything. She has an eye for these things, runs her own interior design studio. She's standing near the entrance in a navy dress, greeting arrivals with her husband Daniel, my son-in-law, the man I'm supposedly handing my life's work to tonight. Daniel Foster walked into our lives 5 years ago with an MBA from Stanford and a handshake that could sell ice to Eskimos. Tall, sharp-featured, the kind of smile that made investors open their checkbooks. Rebecca met him at some charity gala, came home glowing. "Dad, he's brilliant. Works in business consulting, helped to turn around 3 failing companies." Within months, they were engaged. Within a year, married. I offered him a position as vice president. Figured having family in the business made sense. Someone I could trust. And at first, Daniel seemed perfect. He'd show up at my house Sunday mornings with coffee, ask questions about the business, listen to stories about the early days when I was changing oil in a rented garage at midnight. "Irving, your instincts built this empire," he'd say. "I just want to help it grow." The first year he did exactly that. Landed a contract with a fleet management company worth $300,000 annually. Streamlined our inventory system, cutting costs by 12%. Even the old-timers who didn't trust outsiders admitted he had skills. I started thinking about retirement, really thinking about it. My back wasn't what it used to be, and Rebecca kept suggesting I take it easy. "Let Daniel handle the stress, Dad. You've earned rest." But somewhere around year 3, something shifted. It started small. Daniel would make decisions without running them by me first. "Just updating our marketing strategy, Irving. You're busy. Didn't want to bother you with details." Then bigger moves. Hiring new managers for 3 locations without interviews I'd attend. "Trust me, they're solid. You taught me to read people, remember?" His tone changed too. The Sunday coffees stopped. When I'd question a choice, he'd smile that patient smile, the one you give a confused elderly relative. "Irving, the industry's evolving. What worked in the 80s doesn't fly now. We need to modernize." Rebecca started echoing him. Last Thanksgiving, I mentioned wanting to review the quarterly reports personally, and she actually rolled her eyes. "Dad, Daniel's got it handled. You're micromanaging." Micromanaging? My own company. 3 weeks ago, I suggested we hold off on a $70,000 software upgrade Daniel proposed. He looked at me across the conference table like I'd suggested we go back to using typewriters. "This is exactly why fresh leadership matters," he said. Not to me, to the 3 managers sitting with us, making me look like the obstacle. Tonight, walking through this ballroom, I notice how people greet Daniel first, then me, like I'm the accessory to my own retirement party. He's working the room, hand on shoulders, big laughs. Rebecca beside him, beaming with pride. They make a striking couple. Power couple, the society pages called them. I spot Teresa Morales, my head accountant for 18 years, standing near the bar. She catches my eye and gives a small nod. Teresa's one of the few people here tonight who knows what I know. We'll get to that. "Irving!" Daniel's voice booms across the room. He's waving me over to a cluster of investors. "Come meet the AutoNation representatives. We were just discussing future opportunities." Future opportunities, right? I make my way over, shaking hands, accepting congratulations. The AutoNation executive, a silver-haired man named Phillips, pumps my hand enthusiastically. Mr. Coleman, Daniel's been telling us about your incredible journey. Inspiring stuff. Has he? I keep my smile neutral. Absolutely. He mentioned you're looking forward to a well-deserved retirement. Travel, hobbies, relaxation. Daniel's arm settles across my shoulders. Heavy, possessive. Irving's got a whole garage full of classic Corvettes he's been dying to restore. Isn't that right? Something like that. And we'll make sure Coleman's auto care thrives in your absence, Daniel continues, his grip tightening slightly. New generation, new vision, building on your foundation, of course. Of course. The lights dim. A microphone squeals feedback. Daniel's arranged for a video presentation, highlights of my career, old photos flashing across screens. There I am at 25, covered in grease, grinning beside my first tow truck. There's the ribbon cutting for location number 5. My late wife Sarah beside me. Daniel made sure to include her, the sentimental touch. Rebecca dabs her eyes. The crowd applauds. Then the lights come up and Daniel's guiding me toward the stage. Time for the man of the hour to say a few words. His hand presses against my back, propelling me forward. The crowd parts. 200 faces turn toward me, expectant. I climb the 3 steps to the platform. The microphone stands waiting. Behind me, blown-up photos of my career hang on the wall, 40 years compressed into images. I clear my throat. I started with the standard lines. Thanked everyone for coming. Mentioned the early days when success meant making payroll and having enough left over for rent. The crowd chuckled at the right moments. I saw familiar faces nodding, people who'd been with me from the beginning, who remembered installing lifts in that first expansion. 40 years ago, I had a toolbox and a dream, I said. Thought if I worked hard enough, stayed honest, built something solid, it would matter. And for a long time, I believed I'd succeeded. That's when Daniel moved. I saw it in my peripheral vision, him stepping toward the stage, that confident stride. Before I could continue, he was beside me, hand extended for the microphone. Not asking, taking. Irving, let me add something here. His smile dazzled the room. He didn't wait for me to hand over the mic, just plucked it from my grip. Smooth, practiced. The crowd shifted, uncertain. Daniel's voice filled the ballroom, warm and authoritative. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be honest for a moment. Irving Coleman founded this company 40 years ago, and we honor that. We absolutely honor that. He paused, letting it sink in. But the last 5 years, the growth that took us from 15 locations to 23, the contracts that doubled our revenue, the modernization that made us competitive in today's market. He turned, gesturing at me like I was a museum exhibit. That was me. That was my team. That was the new generation taking what Irving built and making it into something that actually matters in the 21st century. A few people clapped, uncertain at first, then others joined. The sound grew. Daniel's voice rose over the applause. Irving is a good man, a kind man, but his time has passed. The old ways, the old thinking, they don't work anymore. So here's what I'm proposing. Forget the past. Forget the old guard. The future of Coleman's Auto Care starts tonight, and it starts with leadership that understands where this industry is going. The applause became thunder. People stood. Not everyone. Teresa Morales stayed seated, her face carefully blank. A few of the older managers looked uncomfortable, but the investors, the younger staff, the people Daniel had hired, they were on their feet, cheering. Rebecca appeared beside her husband, slipping her arm through his. She was glowing, proud. She didn't even glance at me. Daniel raised his free hand, accepting the ovation. Thank you. Thank you. And Irving, he finally looked at me. Thank you for building the foundation. We'll take it from here. I stood there, 5 feet from the microphone I'd been holding 30 seconds ago, watching my son-in-law receive a standing ovation for dismissing me at my own retirement party. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something calculating. I let myself remember other moments, flashes of the past year, things I'd been too trusting to see clearly. Like 4 months ago when I'd mentioned wanting to review the financial statements personally. Daniel had laughed it off. Irving, you've got Teresa for that. Besides, looking at spreadsheets isn't how you should spend your golden years. Golden years? Like I was already put out to pasture? Or 6 weeks back, when I'd asked about a consulting firm we'd supposedly hired, $78,000 for strategic planning services. Daniel had waved it off. Standard industry practice. You wouldn't understand the new metrics. I wouldn't understand. About my own company. The memory that hit hardest came from 2 months ago. I'd been in my garage, my sanctuary where I restore classic cars, working on a 1967 Corvette Stingray. Rebecca had stopped by, unusual for her. We used to be close. Sunday dinners, phone calls about nothing in particular. That had faded. She'd perched on my workbench, watching me adjust the carburetor. Dad, Daniel and I were talking. You've worked so hard for so long. Maybe it's time to really let go. Let Daniel run things. You trust him, right? I'd looked up at her then, really looked. When had my daughter started sounding like she was reading from a script? Of course I trust him, sweetheart. He's your husband. Then prove it. Step back. Fully. Let him lead. The way she'd said it, like a challenge. Like I was the one being unreasonable. Now, standing on this stage while my son-in-law basked in applause meant for my career, those moments crystallized into understanding. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't spontaneous. Daniel had been positioning himself for months, maybe years, and Rebecca, my daughter, my only child, had either been fooled or was in on it. The applause finally died down. Daniel turned to me, extending the microphone. Want to add anything, Irving? The room waited. 200 faces, some sympathetic, some already looking at Daniel as the real leader, some just uncomfortable with the tension. I took the microphone. Slowly, let the silence stretch. Then I smiled. Not a warm smile, a cold one. The smile of a man who's been playing poker for 40 years and just realized he's been letting someone peek at his cards. Actually, Daniel, I do have something to add. My voice came out steady, calm. But it can wait. Tonight's about celebration, about recognizing what people have really built, what they've really earned. I saw the flicker in his eyes, uncertainty, just for a second. Enjoy the party, everyone. We'll talk business soon enough. I handed the microphone to the event coordinator and stepped off the stage, walked straight to Teresa Morales. She stood as I approached, her expression carefully neutral. Teresa, take a walk with me. We moved to the empty hallway outside the ballroom. The sounds of the party became muffled. Tell me everything, I said quietly. Every detail you found. Teresa pulled out her phone, brought up a document. 3 months ago, you asked me to flag unusual transactions. I've been keeping a separate file. She scrolled through entries. Here's the first one that caught my attention. $34,000 to Strategic Solutions, LLC. Consulting services. But when I checked, the company barely exists. Registered 8 months ago. No physical office. No employees listed. Just a P.O. box. And the others? Market Insights Group. $28,500. Same story. Then I went back further. She looked up at me. Irving, there's more. A lot more. Through the wall, I could hear Daniel's voice rising above the crowd. Another toast. More laughter. How much more, Teresa? I'm still tracking all of it, but conservatively, over $800,000 in the last 2 years. All approved by Daniel. All to companies that don't seem to provide actual services. $800,000. Enough to make me sick, but not enough to make me reckless. Have you told anyone else? No one. You said to keep it quiet. Good. Keep it that way. I straightened my jacket. Monday morning, I need you to do something for me. Make copies of everything, every suspicious transaction, every document, every email. Store them somewhere Daniel can't access. What are you going to do? I looked back toward the ballroom doors. Through the small windows, I could see Daniel holding court, my daughter beside him, both of them laughing. I'm going to remind my son-in-law that this company has my name on it, and that 40 years in business taught me one crucial lesson. Teresa waited. Trust everyone, I said. But always cut the cards. The conversation with Teresa that night in the hallway wasn't the first time we'd discussed Daniel's suspicious transactions. It was just the first time I'd admitted out loud what I'd been thinking for months. Let me back up. 3 months earlier. It was a Tuesday morning in May. I remember because I'd been planning my retirement timeline, mapping out dates on the calendar in my home office. Rebecca and Daniel were supposed to come over for dinner that weekend. Normal family stuff. or what passed for normal anymore. Teresa knocked on my office door around 10. She had that look, the one accountants get when numbers don't add up and they're trying to decide if it's a mistake or a problem. "Irving, do you have a few minutes?" "Always. What's going on?" She closed the door behind her. That's when I knew it wasn't good. I'd been going through the quarterly expenses, and something caught my eye. She laid a printed spreadsheet on my desk. "This payment here. $34,000 to a company called Strategic Solutions, LLC, Consulting Services." I scanned the line. The approval signature was Daniel's. "Consulting on what?" "That's what I wanted to ask you. I don't have any records of a contract with them. No invoices, no project scope, no deliverables, just this single payment." I pulled the sheet closer. "When was this approved?" 2 months ago. But here's the thing. I checked the business registry. Strategic Solutions was incorporated 7 months ago. Delaware registration, which isn't unusual, but they have no website, no employee listings, just a P.O. box for an address. A prickle of unease ran down my spine. Maybe it's a legitimate small firm. Daniel handles a lot of vendor relationships now. "Maybe." Teresa didn't sound convinced. "But then I found this one." She pointed to another line. "Market Insights Group, 28,500. Also approved by Daniel. Also incorporated less than a year ago. Also, no real presence beyond a registration." I sat back in my chair. 2 ghost companies. $62,500. Could be legitimate. Could be nothing. Could be something very wrong. "Has Daniel mentioned these firms to you?" Teresa asked carefully. "No. But he doesn't run every vendor decision by me anymore. That was part of the transition plan, giving him more autonomy." Even as I said it, I heard the defensiveness in my voice. Teresa nodded slowly. "Of course. I just thought you should know, in case you wanted to ask him about it." After she left, I sat there staring at those 2 line items. My first instinct was to walk down the hall and ask Daniel directly. That's what I would have done a year ago. But something stopped me. The way he'd been treating me lately, the dismissive comments, the patient explanations like I was losing my edge. If I confronted him and these were legitimate expenses, I'd look paranoid, suspicious of my own son-in-law, and if they weren't legitimate. I picked up the phone and called a number I'd kept in my personal contacts for years. Stephen Gray, former IRS investigator, now running a private investigation firm. We'd met at a business networking event 5 years back, stayed in casual contact. "Stephen, it's Irving Coleman. I need to hire you for something discreet." We met the next day at a coffee shop 20 miles from my office. Neutral territory. I showed him copies of the transactions Teresa had flagged. "I need to know if these companies are real," I said, "and I need to know what other payments might have been made that I don't know about. Can you do that without alerting anyone at my company?" Stephen studied the documents. "How far back do you want me to look?" 2 years. Every transaction approved by my vice president, Daniel Foster. "This is family, Irving, your son-in-law. I know exactly who he is." I met his eyes. "That's why I need to be sure before I do anything. 12,000 for a full audit." "Can you start immediately?" He could. He did. For the next 3 weeks, I watched Daniel more carefully. Noticed things I'd been too trusting to see before. The way he'd steer conversations away from financial details when I asked questions. How he'd rescheduled our weekly operations meetings twice in a row, claiming conflicts. The expensive watch he'd started wearing looked like a Rolex Submariner, maybe $15,000. When did he buy that? Rebecca came over one evening. Daniel was working late. She sat in my kitchen, scrolling through her phone while I made us both coffee. "Dad, Daniel mentioned you've been asking a lot of questions about the consulting contracts." My hand stilled on the coffee pot. "He told you that?" "He's a little worried you don't trust his judgment anymore, that you're second-guessing his decisions." "I'm not second-guessing anything. I'm trying to stay informed about my own company." She looked up from her phone. "Your company. You still think of it that way." "Rebecca, I built this business before you were born. And Daniel's grown it more in 5 years than you did in the previous 10. Maybe it's time to accept that he knows what he's doing." The coffee suddenly tasted bitter. When had my daughter started speaking to me like I was the problem? 2 weeks later, Stephen Gray called. "We need to meet, not over the phone." His office was in a nondescript building near the Galleria. He had files spread across his desk when I arrived. Thick files. "Irving, sit down." I sat. "Your instincts were right. Strategic Solutions and Market Insights Group are shell companies. I trace the ownership through 3 layers of LLC registrations, and they all lead back to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands." My stomach dropped. "Can you connect them to Daniel?" "Not directly. Whoever set this up knew what they were doing. But here's what I can connect." He pulled out a timeline. "In the last 24 months, your company has made payments to 4 different consulting and marketing firms. Total amount, $847,000. Every single payment was approved by Daniel Foster. Every single company was incorporated within the last 2 years. None of them have employees, physical offices, or legitimate business operations. $847,000. "There's more," Stephen continued. "I found preliminary documentation for a sale agreement between Coleman's Auto Care and AutoNation Incorporated. $47 million purchase price. The contract includes a $14 million executive retention payment to your vice president upon completion of the sale." I couldn't speak. "Irving, your son-in-law isn't just stealing from you. He's positioning to sell your company and walk away with a massive payout." The next morning, I called Robert Clark, the attorney who'd handled my corporate legal work for 18 years. Not a friend, just the best lawyer I knew. "Robert, I need to see you today. It's urgent." His office occupied half the 45th floor of a downtown high-rise, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Houston. Robert was in his early 50s, sharp-eyed and methodical, the kind of lawyer who found loopholes before opposing counsel knew they existed. I spread Stephen Gray's findings across his conference table. Robert read through everything twice. When he finally looked up, his expression was grim. "This is wire fraud, money laundering, probably more charges once federal investigators dig deeper. Your son-in-law is looking at serious prison time. Can we prove it's him? With what you've got here? The circumstantial evidence is strong. He approved every payment. He's negotiating the sale that would give him a massive payout. But to guarantee a conviction, we'd need more. Bank records, communication logs, testimony from anyone else involved. How do we get that?" Robert leaned back. "We go to the FBI Financial Crimes Division. They have subpoena power, forensic accountants, the resources to build an airtight case. And in the meantime, Daniel keeps stealing, keeps positioning to sell my company." "What are you suggesting?" I thought about the retirement party being planned. 8 weeks away. Daniel had volunteered to help organize it, was treating it like a coronation, his coronation. I want to stop him, publicly, at the retirement party. I want everyone who saw him build his reputation on my company to see exactly what he is. Robert was quiet for a moment. "That's risky, Irving. If we move too soon, he could destroy evidence. If we wait too long, he could complete the sale. So we move carefully, we build the case, get the FBI involved, freeze his access to the money, but we time it for maximum impact. Revenge, justice." I met his eyes. "There's a difference." Over the next 6 weeks, we executed the plan with surgical precision. Robert contacted a federal agent named Gerald Sanchez in the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, handed over everything Stephen had found. Gerald opened an official investigation, but agreed to hold off on any public action until we gave the signal. Teresa created duplicate copies of every financial record, every email, every document related to the suspicious transactions, stored them on encrypted drives in 3 separate locations. Even if Daniel tried to delete evidence, we'd have backups. Stephen Gray continued digging, found the offshore accounts, traced the money trail, discovered that Daniel had been siphoning funds for more than 2 years, using increasingly sophisticated methods to hide the theft. And I played my part perfectly. I became the trusting father-in-law again. Told Daniel how proud I was of his work, how confident I felt leaving the company in his hands. Let him think he'd won. It wasn't easy. Sitting across from him at management meetings, watching him present numbers that I now knew were manipulated, listening to Rebecca praise his business acumen, knowing what I knew. But I smiled, nodded, signed off on his proposals, the ones that weren't actively criminal anyway. "Irving, you seem more relaxed lately." Daniel said one afternoon, about 3 weeks before the party. "I'm glad you're finally embracing retirement." "You were right," I told him. "It's time to let the new generation lead. I trust you to take care of the company." The smile that crossed his face was pure triumph. He actually believed it. 2 weeks before the party, Robert executed the legal maneuvers. I signed documents that clarified something Daniel had apparently forgotten. I'd never actually transferred company ownership to him. I'd promised to, sure, discussed it. Let him operate as though the transition was inevitable. But the shares, still 100% in my name. Robert filed the paperwork quietly, updated the corporate registry, made it official and airtight. 1 week before the party, Phase 2 began. Robert sent letters to Daniel's bank, the one holding his personal accounts and the corporate accounts he had access to. The letters referenced the ongoing federal investigation and requested a freeze on certain accounts pending further review. Daniel called me 3 days before the party, voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Irving, something's wrong with the bank. They're saying there's a technical issue with the corporate accounts. I can't access them." "Technical issue? That's odd. Have you called their customer service?" "Of course I called. They're being vague. Something about security protocols and verification processes." "I'm sure it'll sort itself out, Daniel. Banks have glitches all the time." "But the party's in 3 days. I need to authorize final payments for the venue. The catering—" "I'll handle it. Don't worry. You just focus on your speech." I paused. "You're working on a speech, aren't you?" "Yeah. Been putting it together for a while now." His voice softened just a little. "I want to get the words right. Pay proper respect to your legacy while looking ahead to what's next. I'm sure it'll be something people remember." On the morning of the party, I stood in my garage, buffing the chrome on my 1967 Corvette Stingray. Normally, the mechanical work settled my nerves, but today my hands were steady for a different reason. Everything was ready. Gerald Sanchez would be there, dressed as a regular guest. Hotel security had been briefed. The evidence was assembled, accounts frozen, legal steps in place. Now it was just a matter of letting Daniel condemn himself with his own words. Rebecca called around noon. "Dad, I'm heading to the hotel a bit early to double-check the setup. Daniel's already there, making sure everything's flawless." "Good. That's perfect." I set the polishing rag down. "Rebecca, listen. I want you to hear this." "What is it?" "No matter what goes down tonight, I love you. You're my daughter. That never changes." "Dad, you're being so dramatic. It's only a retirement party." "Right, just a party." After we ended the call, I slipped on my suit jacket. I patted my pocket, USB drive with backup evidence files, just in case. Robert held the originals. Gerald had the official copies, but I liked having my own insurance. I glanced in the mirror. 68 years old. Built a company from scratch. Raised a daughter by myself after her mother passed. Always thought I'd done things the right way. Tonight, I'd learn whether I'd also taught my son-in-law that stealing from family comes with a price. The drive to the Four Seasons took 20 minutes. I parked in the underground garage and rode the elevator up to the ballroom level. You could already hear the party starting. Murmured voices, laughter, the soft clink of glasses. Gerald Sanchez stood near the bar, blending in perfectly in his dark suit. We'd never met face to face, but Robert's description matched. Mid-50s, graying at the temples, the kind of face that disappeared in a crowd. Our eyes met, gave the smallest nod. Daniel appeared beside me, grinning wide. "Irving! The guest of honor arrives. Come on, people are waiting to see you." He guided me into the ballroom. All those faces turning toward us. Toward him, really. They'd already made their choice about who mattered, but that was about to change. "Tonight's going to be special," Daniel said quietly, his hand on my shoulder. "A real turning point," I smiled. "You have no idea." The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in performance. I played the grateful father-in-law perfectly, praised Daniel at every opportunity. When he presented the finalized party plans, I put my hand on his shoulder and said, "You've done an amazing job, son. I'm proud of you." The word son made him glow. He actually believed it. Meanwhile, Robert Clark was filing motions. Teresa was copying files. Stephen Gray was coordinating with Gerald Sanchez, feeding him everything we'd found. The FBI agent was building his case brick by brick, preparing for what would be the most public arrest of a white-collar criminal Houston had seen in years. I kept my regular schedule. Monday morning coffee at the same cafe I'd gone to since the 80s. Tuesday meetings reviewing operations, though now Daniel ran them, and I sat quietly in the corner like a retired executive who couldn't quite let go. Wednesday afternoons in my garage, working on the Corvette. Daniel stopped by the garage one Wednesday about 10 days before the party. He leaned against the workbench, watching me adjust the carburetor on the Stingray. You know, Irving, I've been thinking. After the transition is complete, you should take that car and just drive. Route 66, Pacific Coast Highway. Whatever you want. I didn't look up from the engine. That sounds nice. You deserve it. You've built something incredible. Now it's time to enjoy the fruits of your labor. The irony was so thick I could taste it. He was talking about me enjoying retirement, while he was planning to sell my company and disappear with close to $1 million of stolen money. I tightened a bolt. What about you, Daniel? What are your plans once you're running things? Growth, expansion, maybe open locations in Louisiana, New Mexico. Take Coleman's Auto Care National. He paused. Actually, I've been in talks with AutoNation about a partnership. Could be huge. Partnership? I kept my voice mild, curious. Well, potentially more than that. They're interested in acquiring regional chains, building a network. The offer they mentioned would make us both very wealthy men. How wealthy? High 8 figures, maybe 9. He grinned. But that's down the road. First, we need to make sure the transition goes smoothly. I straightened up, wiped my hands on a rag, looked him in the eye. Daniel, I want you to know something. Whatever happens, I've always tried to do right by my family, by Rebecca, by this company. I know that, Irving, and I trust that you'll do the same. Take care of my daughter. Take care of the business. Honor what we've built. He clasped my shoulder. You have my word. His word. The same word he'd given when he married Rebecca, when he joined the company, when he approved those fake consulting payments. 3 days later, Robert called me into his office. Gerald Sanchez was there, along with another FBI agent I hadn't met, a woman in her 40s named Martinez. We're ready, Gerald said. The evidence package is complete. We've traced the money through the shell companies to the offshore accounts. We've documented Daniel's role in every transaction. We have him on wire fraud, money laundering, and embezzlement. When do you move? I asked. That's up to you. We can arrest him tomorrow, or we can wait. Your call. I thought about the retirement party. 200 guests. Daniel's moment of triumph. The perfect stage. Wait until the party. I want everyone to see. Everyone who believed his lies, who thought I was the obstacle. I want them to understand exactly what he is. Martinez spoke up. Mr. Coleman, you understand this is irregular. Normally we'd execute the arrest quietly, minimize publicity. I understand. But this isn't just about the law. It's about my reputation, my company, my daughter's future. Daniel humiliated me publicly. He deserves the same treatment. Gerald nodded slowly. I'll be there in civilian clothes. When you give the signal, we'll move. What's the signal? Robert asks. I thought about it. When I say the words, check your accounts, that's when you approach. The morning of the party, I woke up early. Couldn't sleep anyway. Made coffee, sat in my kitchen watching the sun rise over Houston. In a few hours, everything would change. Around 10, I went to the garage. The Corvette was gleaming. Perfect. I'd spent months restoring it, getting every detail right. Something about the precision of mechanical work calmed me. You could see cause and effect clearly. Turn this bolt, adjust that valve, and the engine runs smoother. If only people were that straightforward. My phone rang. Rebecca. Dad, just confirming you'll be at the hotel by 6. Daniel wants to do a final walkthrough with you before guests arrive. I'll be there. Are you okay? You sound tired. I almost told her then, almost warned her what was coming. But she'd chosen Daniel's version of reality over mine. She needed to see the truth for herself. Just a big day, sweetheart. A lot of memories. It's going to be beautiful. Daniel's worked so hard to make it perfect. I'm sure he has. At noon, Daniel showed up at my house, unannounced, which he never used to do. He was wearing a new suit. Looked like Armani. Probably $3,000. Where did he get the money for that? Oh, right. My company. Irving, big day. You ready for tonight? As ready as I'll ever be. He stepped into my foyer, looking around like he owned the place. Maybe in his mind he already did. I wanted to run through my speech with you, make sure the tone is right. We sat in my study. He pulled out note cards. I open with gratitude. Thank everyone for coming. Then I transition to your legacy, the foundation you built. Then I pivot to the future, to innovation, to what's next. He looked up. What do you think? Sounds like you've got it all planned out. I do. This is important, Irving, not just for the company, but for Rebecca and me. Our future, our family. Family. He kept using that word. There's just one thing, Daniel. What's that? Make sure your phone is charged. You might need it tonight. He laughed. For photos? Yeah, Rebecca already reminded me. She wants tons of pictures. Right, photos. He left around 2. I spent the next hour going over everything with Robert on the phone. The documents were ready. The accounts were frozen. Gerald would be positioned near the stage. Hotel security had been briefed. They thought it was a medical emergency protocol, didn't know the real reason. Everything was in place. I showered, dressed in my best suit. Navy blue, the one I'd bought for Rebecca's wedding. Fitting, somehow. In my pocket, I placed the USB drive with copies of all the evidence. Just insurance. The drive to the Four Seasons felt longer than usual. Traffic was light, but my mind was racing, thinking about Rebecca, about whether I should have handled this differently, whether I should have confronted Daniel privately, given him a chance to confess, to make things right. But then I remembered him on that stage at the investor meeting, dismissing my concerns in front of my own managers. Remembered the contempt in his voice when he called my methods outdated. Remembered $847,000 stolen over 2 years. Number, he'd made his choices. Now he'd face the consequences. I pulled into the hotel parking garage at 5:30. The party started at 7, but Daniel wanted us there early for final preparations. I took the elevator to the ballroom level, walked into controlled chaos. Event staff were arranging tables. The catering crew was setting up the buffet. A tech team was testing the sound system. And there, in the middle of it all, was Daniel, directing everything like a maestro conducting an orchestra. He saw me and waved. Irving, perfect timing. Come see what we've put together. The ballroom looked spectacular. White and gold theme, elegant without being ostentatious. Photographs of my career blown up and mounted on stands around the room. A stage with a podium. 2 microphones. Professional lighting. This must have cost a fortune, I said. Only the best for you. Daniel grinned. Besides, it's an investment. Everyone important in Houston's automotive industry will be here tonight. Good for business. Good for his business, he meant. The business he was planning to sell. Rebecca arrived 10 minutes later, stunning in a navy dress that matched her eyes. She hugged me. Dad, are you excited? More than you know, sweetheart. She and Daniel conferred about last-minute details. I stood to the side, watching them work as a team. They looked happy. Connected. It made what was coming even more complicated. At 6:15, a man I recognized as Gerald Sanchez walked in wearing a dark suit and tie. He looked like any other early guest, successful, professional, unremarkable. Our eyes met briefly. He gave the smallest nod, then moved to the bar area, positioning himself with a clear view of the stage. Guests started arriving at 6:30. First the business associates, then friends, then employees. By 7, the room was filling up. I greeted people, shook hands, accepted congratulations. Everyone kept telling me how much I'd miss work, how retirement would be an adjustment. If they only knew what was about to happen. Daniel was in his element, working the room. I watched him charm the AutoNation executives, laugh with the investors, pose for photos with employees. He'd positioned himself as my successor so effectively that people genuinely believed he'd earned it. At 7:30, the lights dimmed for the video presentation. My career in pictures and video clips. There was genuine emotion in the room. I'd employed many of these people for decades, been part of their lives. When the lights came back up, Daniel guided me toward the stage, his hand on my back, confident and proprietary. We climbed the steps together. He handed me the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "thank you all for being here tonight." The crowd quieted. I looked out at those 200 faces, saw Teresa Morales standing near the back, her expression unreadable, saw Gerald Sanchez at the bar, hand casually in his pocket where his badge must be, saw Rebecca in the front row, smiling up at me with pride. I started my speech, talked about the early days, the struggles, the victories, the people who'd helped me build Coleman's Auto Care into what it was today, and then Daniel made his move. Just like we'd discussed in my hallway with Teresa, he stepped forward and took the microphone. Smooth, practiced. The crowd shifted, surprised but not alarmed. "Irving, let me add something here," he said, that brilliant smile lighting up the room. I stepped back. "Let him have the stage. Let him dig his own grave." He launched into his speech. How I'd founded the company 40 years ago. Ancient history. How the last 5 years of growth were his achievement, his vision, his execution. The crowd started to applaud. "Irving is a good man," Daniel said, his voice carrying across the room. "But his time has passed. The old ways don't work anymore. Forget the past. Forget the old guard. The future starts tonight." The applause grew. People stood. Rebecca joined him on stage, slipping her arm through his. They looked like conquerors, like they'd already won. Daniel turned to me, extending the microphone. "Want to add anything, Irving?" The room fell silent. 200 people waiting to see how the defeated old man would respond. I took the microphone, let the silence stretch, looked at Daniel, then at Rebecca, then at the crowd. Then I smiled. Cold, calm, calculated. "Actually, Daniel, I do have something to add, but first," I pulled out my phone, held it up. "I need everyone to do something for me. Everyone with access to Coleman's Auto Care financial accounts. Daniel especially." His smile faltered slightly. "Irving, what are you—" "Check your accounts, right now." The room went quiet. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. Daniel's face shifted, uncertainty replacing confidence. "This isn't the time for—" I said, "Check your accounts." My voice was steel. "All of them. Corporate access. Personal accounts. Offshore holdings. Check them all." His hand went to his pocket, pulled out his phone. I watched his face as he opened his banking app, watched the color drain from his cheeks, watched his eyes widen. It was beautiful. His thumb moved frantically across the screen, checking one account, then another, then another. Each time, his expression grew more panicked. "What?" His voice cracked. "What did you do?" "Me? I didn't do anything, Daniel. I just made some calls, had some conversations. With my lawyer, with my accountant, with some very interested federal agents." The room was dead silent now. Gerald Sanchez was moving through the crowd, getting closer to the stage. Daniel looked up at me, his face the color of old concrete. "You can't. This is $847,000. I spoke clearly, making sure everyone could hear. "That's how much you stole from this company over the last 2 years, using fake consulting firms, shell companies, offshore accounts. You thought I wouldn't notice, thought I was too old, too trusting, too stupid to see what you were doing." Rebecca's hand dropped from Daniel's arm. "Dad, what are you talking about?" "Your husband is a thief, sweetheart. He's been embezzling from Coleman's Auto Care since the day I gave him financial authority, and he was planning to sell the company to AutoNation for $47 million, pocket $14 million in executive compensation, and disappear." Daniel's phone slipped from his hand, clattered on the stage. "That's not... You don't... This is a misunderstanding." Gerald Sanchez reached the stage steps, pulled out his badge. "Daniel Foster, I'm Special Agent Gerald Sanchez, FBI. We need to have a conversation." The look on Daniel's face was everything I'd imagined, and more. Total shock, disbelief, then panic. Pure animal panic. His eyes darted around the room, looking for an exit, but hotel security had already moved to block the doors. "This is insane!" His voice rose, desperate. "Irving, tell them this is a mistake. Rebecca, tell them." But Rebecca was staring at me, tears streaming down her face. "Dad, is this true?" I held her gaze. "Every word." Daniel's legs seemed to buckle. He grabbed the podium for support. "I can explain. The money, It was investments. For the company. You don't understand the new economy. I understand theft, I said quietly. I understand betrayal, and I understand that you're done. Gerald was on the stage now. Mr. Foster, you have the right to remain silent. And just like that, my son-in-law's perfect world collapsed. The ballroom erupted in chaos. Voices overlapping, people standing, phones coming out to record what was happening. The AutoNation executives looked mortified. My longtime employees looked stunned. And Daniel looked like a man watching his entire life implode in real time. You have the right to an attorney, Gerald continued, his voice professional and calm. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Daniel's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. No sound came out. His hands were shaking so badly he couldn't seem to control them. Rebecca stumbled backward, away from him, away from me. Her face was a portrait of betrayal and confusion. Dad, this can't be real. Tell me this isn't real. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I wish it wasn't. Mr. Foster, Gerald said firmly, I need you to come with me. We can do this quietly, or... No! Daniel's voice cracked. He spun toward the crowd, desperation bleeding from every pore. This is a setup. Irving's been trying to push me out for months. He can't accept that I'm better at running his company than he ever was. The room went deathly quiet. I stepped closer to the microphone. Daniel, stop. You're only making this worse. Worse? He laughed, high and manic. You've ruined me. In front of everyone. My career, my reputation. You ruined yourself. My voice cut through his panic like a knife. The moment you registered that first fake company. The moment you transferred the first $1. You made choices, Daniel. Now you face consequences. He turned to Rebecca, grabbing her arm. She flinched. Tell your father he's wrong. We're a team, remember? We've built this together. She pulled away from him. Don't touch me. Rebecca, please. How much? Her voice was barely a whisper. How much did you steal? It wasn't stealing. It was strategic repositioning of assets. If Irving had just listened to my vision... How? Much. Daniel's jaw clenched. The numbers inflated. It's not as bad as he's making it sound. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket, held it up. $847,000, Rebecca. Documented in detail. Bank transfers. Fake invoices. Shell company registrations. All approved by your husband. All traceable back to offshore accounts in his control. She swayed. Teresa Morales moved through the crowd, caught her elbow, steadied her. Daniel's eyes locked on the USB drive, then on me, and something shifted in his expression. The desperation gave way to cold calculation, the mask slipping back into place. You think you're so smart, Irving? Think you've won, but you have no idea what you've done. Is that a threat? It's a fact. I know things about Coleman's Auto Care, things that could hurt the company. Destroy it, even. You want to play this game? Fine, but don't pretend you're the hero here. Gerald stepped between us. Mr. Foster, that's enough. Let's go. 2 hotel security guards moved in. Daniel looked at them, at Gerald, at the crowd. His eyes found the AutoNation executives. Tell them, he shouted at Phillips. Tell them about our deal, the $47 million purchase agreement. Irving's blocking it because he's a jealous old man who can't accept progress. Phillips stood up, his face carefully neutral. Mr. Foster, given tonight's revelations, AutoNation will be withdrawing from all negotiations. Our legal team will be in touch. The blood drained from Daniel's face again. No, you can't. That deal was solid. I worked for months. You worked for months to set yourself up, I said, to pocket $14 million and leave my company to deal with the fallout. AutoNation's already been informed. They know everything. Daniel's knees actually buckled this time. The security guards caught him, held him upright. Irving Coleman, he said, his voice venomous, you sanctimonious piece of... Language, Daniel. I kept my tone light, almost amused. There are ladies present, including your wife, or should I say, soon-to-be ex-wife. Rebecca made a sound, half sob, half gasp. Daniel's gaze swung to her. Rebecca, baby, listen to me. Your father's been planning this for weeks. He's manipulating you, making me look bad because he can't stand that I'm more successful than... Take him out, I told Gerald quietly. The FBI agent nodded. He and the security guards escorted Daniel toward the exit. My son-in-law fought every step, shouting over his shoulder, "This isn't over, Irving. I have lawyers. Good lawyers. You think you can just destroy me? I'll fight this. I'll prove you planted evidence, fabricated documents." The doors closed behind him. His voice cut off mid-rant. The ballroom remained silent. 200 people staring at me, at Rebecca, at the space where Daniel had been standing 30 seconds ago. I took a breath, let it out slowly. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said into the microphone, "I apologize that your evening has been disrupted. This was not how I wanted tonight to go, but I couldn't let this continue. Couldn't let someone steal from the company so many of you helped build." Teresa stepped forward. "Irving's telling the truth. I've seen the evidence. Daniel Foster has been systematically embezzling from Coleman's Auto Care. The FBI has everything they need for prosecution." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some people were already leaving. Others clustered in groups, whispering. The AutoNation executives were gone, probably calling their lawyers. I looked at Rebecca. She was standing alone now, Teresa having stepped away. Tears streamed down her face, mascara running. She looked lost, broken. "Sweetheart, don't," her voice was sharp. "Don't call me that. Not right now." She pushed through the crowd and fled the ballroom. I started to follow, but Robert Clark appeared at my elbow. "Let her go, Irving. She needs time to process. She's my daughter, and she just watched her husband get arrested at your retirement party. Give her space." He was right. I knew he was right. But every instinct screamed to go after her, to explain, to make her understand. The party was over. People were leaving quickly now, avoiding eye contact. A few long-time employees came up to shake my hand, murmur support, but mostly people just wanted to escape the awkwardness. Within 30 minutes, the ballroom was nearly empty. Just me, Robert, Teresa, and a few staff cleaning up the aftermath. I sat down at one of the tables, suddenly exhausted. "You did the right thing," Teresa said softly. "Then why does it feel so awful?" I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in my study drinking coffee, watching the sun rise over Houston. My phone buzzed periodically with messages, some supportive, some angry, some from reporters who'd somehow already heard about what happened. I ignored them all. Around 8 in the morning, Robert called. Daniel made bail. His parents posted $250,000. "How's he looking?" "According to Gerald, he's lawyered up. Expensive defense attorney out of Dallas. They're already spinning the narrative, claiming you manipulated evidence, that this is a personal vendetta." I rubbed my temples. "Of course they are. The charges are solid, Irving. Wire fraud, money laundering, breach of fiduciary duty. The prosecutor's talking about 20 years. And the company? Stable. Teresa's been fielding calls all morning. Some clients want reassurance, but nobody's pulling contracts. Your reputation's holding." Small comfort. "What about Rebecca?" Silence on the other end. Then, "She's not answering her phone. Daniel's trying to reach her too, from what I understand." That evening she showed up at my house. I heard the car in the driveway, saw her through the window. She looked terrible. Eyes red, hair uncombed, wearing the same clothes from the party. I opened the door before she could knock. "Rebecca, why didn't you tell me?" Her voice was raw. "Why didn't you warn me?" "Come inside, sweetheart." "Stop calling me that." She pushed past me into the foyer. "Answer the question. You knew for months, didn't you? You knew Daniel was stealing, and you didn't say a word to me." "I didn't know if you were involved." She recoiled like I'd slapped her. "You thought I was helping him steal from you?" I didn't know what to think. You'd been defending him, criticizing me, taking his side every time we disagreed. "Because he's my husband, was my husband." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I believed him when he said you were holding the company back, that your methods were outdated, that he was the one making things successful. And now? Now I don't know what to believe." She sank onto my couch, looking small and lost. "He's been calling, texting, saying you set him up, that the evidence is fake, that you're jealous of him." I sat down across from her, pulled out a folder I'd prepared. "These are copies of everything we found. Bank statements, wire transfers, shell company registrations, all the documentation the FBI is using." She didn't reach for it. I can't I can't look at that right now. Rebecca, there's more. More? How can there possibly be more? I hesitated. This was going to hurt her, but she deserved the truth. Stephen Gray, the investigator I hired, he found something else, about Daniel's personal life. Her eyes met mine. I saw fear there, like she already knew but didn't want confirmation. There's a woman, Ashley Morgan, 28 years old. She manages the location on Westheimer. Rebecca's face went white. No. Daniel's been renting her an apartment. $3,400 a month? He's been paying for it out of the company budget, listing it as business expenses. Stop. The affair's been going on for at least 7 months, maybe longer. Stephen has photos, text messages, hotel receipts. She stood up abruptly. I need to go. Rebecca, I said I need to go. Her voice cracked. She headed for the door, then stopped, turned back. Did you know about her? When you were planning all this? I found out 2 weeks ago. And you didn't tell me then either. I wasn't sure how. You weren't sure how to tell your daughter that her husband was cheating on her, that he was stealing from you, that he was planning to sell your company and run off with another woman? She laughed, bitter and broken. When were you planning to share? At Thanksgiving? I wanted to protect you. Well, you failed, Dad. You failed spectacularly. She left. The door slammed hard enough to rattle the windows. I sat there for a long time, holding the folder of evidence, knowing she'd eventually need to see it, knowing it would destroy whatever illusions she still had about Daniel. 3 days later, she came back. No warning, just walked in using her old key. Show me everything, she said. I did. Every document. Every photo Stephen had taken of Daniel and Ashley together. Every text message where he'd called Rebecca clingy or naive to his mistress. Every detail of his plan to sell the company, take the $14 million, and move to California. He bought a house, I said quietly, in Malibu. $2.8 million. Put down $560,000 as a deposit. Stolen money. Yes. She flipped through the photos. Daniel and Ashley at dinner, walking on the beach, kissing in a parking garage. Her hands were shaking. He was going to leave me. Yes. After the sale went through, after he got his money, he was just going to disappear. That's what it looks like. She set the photos down carefully. I want a divorce, immediately, and I want him to know that I know everything. Rebecca, no more protecting me, Dad. No more hiding things because you think I can't handle them. I'm an adult. I made terrible choices trusting him, but I'm going to fix them. She picked up her phone, called a lawyer right there in my living room. By the end of the week, divorce papers were filed. Daniel tried to contest them, claimed reconciliation was possible, that the evidence was manipulated. Rebecca's response, delivered through her attorney. The only manipulation was yours. Sign the papers, or I testify against you. He signed. The night after the papers were finalized, she showed up at my garage. I was working on the Corvette, trying to lose myself in the mechanical simplicity of it. Can I help? She asked. I handed her a wrench. We worked in silence for a while, just the sound of tools and our breathing. I'm sorry, she said finally, for not believing you, for defending him, for making you feel like you couldn't tell me what was happening. You loved him. That's not a crime. I loved the person I thought he was, the real Daniel. She tightened a bolt with more force than necessary. The real Daniel was a stranger, a liar, a thief. You couldn't have known. Neither could you. In the beginning. She set down the wrench, looked at me. But you figured it out, and instead of just confronting him, instead of creating a private scandal, you built a case. You protected the company. You made sure he'd face real consequences. I exposed him at your expense. He exposed himself. You just made sure everyone saw it. She picked up another tool. When's the trial? Prosecutor says probably 3 months. Daniel's lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea deal. What kind of deal? Return the money, plead guilty to reduced charges, maybe 8 to 10 years instead of 20. Are you going to agree to that? I thought about it, about mercy versus justice, about what outcome would actually make things right. I don't know yet, I admitted. Rebecca nodded. Well, whatever you decide, I'll support it. And Dad? Yeah? Thank you for caring enough to stop him, even when it was hard, even when it cost you. We went back to work on the car. And for the first time since that night at the Four Seasons, something felt like it might eventually be okay. The next month was a whirlwind of rebuilding. First order of business, stabilizing Coleman's Auto Care. I postponed my retirement indefinitely. The company needed leadership, and I was the only one who could provide it. I brought in a forensic accounting firm to conduct a complete audit. What they found was worse than we'd initially thought. Daniel hadn't just stolen $847,000. The final tally came to $1,047,000. He'd been more creative than we'd realized. Fake vendor invoices, inflated expense reports, phantom employee salaries that went straight to his accounts. The man had turned embezzlement into an art form. How did he think he'd get away with this? Teresa asked one afternoon, reviewing the audit results in my office. He thought I was too old to notice, too trusting to check. I flipped through another page of fraudulent transactions, and he almost succeeded. I promoted Teresa to CFO. She'd earned it. Without her flagging those initial suspicious payments, Daniel might have sold the company and disappeared before anyone caught on. The AutoNation deal was officially dead, but I called Phillips myself to explain the situation. To my surprise, he was understanding. These things happen, Irving. Corporate fraud is more common than people think. The fact that you caught it and reported it speaks to your integrity. I appreciate that. And Irving, if you ever do decide to sell, call us first. We're still interested in Coleman's Auto Care. Just, without the criminal element. I laughed. First genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. Daniel's legal troubles escalated. The prosecutor assigned to his case was a woman named Patricia Morrison, mid-40s, with a reputation for taking white-collar crime seriously. She called me in for a deposition. Mr. Coleman, I want to be clear about something. Daniel Foster's attorneys are going to argue that you manipulated evidence. That this is a family dispute blown out of proportion. They'll claim you're a vindictive father-in-law trying to destroy him. Let them claim whatever they want. The evidence speaks for itself. It does, but I need to know. Are you prepared to testify, in open court, against your son-in-law? Former son-in-law, and yes, absolutely. She nodded, satisfied. Good, because Mr. Foster's trying to negotiate a plea deal. His lawyers are offering full restitution in exchange for a reduced sentence. 5 years instead of 20. What do you think? I think he stole over $1 million, planned to sell your company out from under you, and showed zero remorse until he got caught. But the decision on whether to accept a plea is partly yours. You're the victim here. I thought about Daniel's face at the retirement party, his arrogance, his contempt, the way he'd dismissed me in front of 200 people. No deal, I said. I want him to face every charge. I want a jury to hear what he did. Patricia smiled. That's what I was hoping you'd say. 2 weeks later, Stephen Gray came to my house with new information. He looked troubled. Irving, I kept digging into Daniel's finances. Found something you need to see. He spread documents across my dining table. Property records, bank statements, real estate transaction details. Daniel bought a house in Malibu. $2.8 million. Put down $560,000 as a deposit. Stolen money. All of it. But here's the interesting part. The house was purchased 6 months ago. Long before the AutoNation sale was finalized, he wasn't waiting to sell your company. He was already preparing to leave. My stomach dropped. Rebecca? Yeah. According to these emails I found, he was planning to move to California with Ashley the week after the sale closed. Had plane tickets booked, moving companies scheduled, everything. He was going to abandon her without a word. Looks that way. There's more. I found text messages between Daniel and Ashley. In them, he calls Rebecca. Stephen hesitated. He calls her clingy and naive. Says she's useful for now, but won't be a part of the future. I felt rage building in my chest. Cold, focused rage. Does Rebecca know about this? Not yet. I wanted to check with you first. She needs to know. She deserves to know exactly who she married. That evening, Rebecca came over for dinner. We'd been doing that more often, trying to rebuild what Daniel had damaged. After we ate, I showed her what Stephen had found. She went pale reading the messages, then red, then pale again. I was just a convenience, she said quietly, a way into the company, a credential to make him look trustworthy. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Don't be." She set down the papers with surprising calm. I needed to see this. Needed to understand that the man I loved never actually existed. It was all performance. The trial's in 2 weeks. The prosecutor wants to use some of this as evidence of premeditation. Shows he was planning the fraud and the exit strategy simultaneously. Use all of it. Her voice was steel. I want everyone to know what he is. The trial began on a Tuesday morning, Federal Courthouse, downtown Houston. I sat in the gallery with Rebecca on one side, Robert Clark on the other. Across the aisle, Daniel sat with his expensive legal team, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost $5,000. Stolen money, I thought. Everything about him is stolen. The prosecution presented their case methodically. Financial records, expert testimony, FBI forensic analysis. Patricia Morrison built her case brick by brick, showing the jury exactly how Daniel had constructed his scheme. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with my head high. Daniel's lawyer, a slick operator named Brennan, tried to rattle me. "Mr. Coleman, isn't it true that you resented your son-in-law's success?" "No." "That you felt threatened by his modernization efforts?" "No." "That you searched for evidence against him because you wanted to maintain control of your company?" "I searched for evidence because my accountant found suspicious transactions. I followed the facts. The facts led to your client's fraud." Brennan tried another angle. "Your daughter, Rebecca, has filed for divorce from Mr. Foster. Isn't this all just family drama?" I looked at Daniel. He was staring at the table, jaw clenched. "My daughter filed for divorce when she learned her husband had been stealing from my company, cheating on her with another woman, and planning to abandon her in California. That's not drama. That's common sense." The jury looked at Daniel. Several of them shook their heads. When Patricia called Rebecca to testify, I watched Daniel's face. He looked nervous for the first time since the trial began. Rebecca took the stand, poised and clear-eyed. She described how Daniel had manipulated her, used her to gain access to the company, convinced her that I was the problem, not him. "Did you have any knowledge of his fraudulent activities?" Patricia asked. "None. I trusted him completely. That was my mistake." "And when did you learn about his relationship with Ashley Morgan?" "When my father showed me the evidence, along with proof that Daniel had been planning to leave me for months." Daniel's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. The trial lasted 6 days. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Daniel's face when the verdict was read was something I'll remember for the rest of my life. All the arrogance drained away in an instant. His shoulders slumped forward like someone had cut his strings. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Just this small, strangled gasp. His lawyer gripped his arm, probably worried he'd collapse right there. I felt no triumph in that moment. Just a cold satisfaction that justice had been served. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. The courtroom was packed. Press in the back rows, sensing blood in the water. Rebecca sat beside me, her hand in mine. The judge was a stern woman in her 60s named Catherine Reeves. She'd reviewed all the evidence, read the victim impact statements, considered the arguments from both sides. "Mr. Foster," she said, looking down at Daniel from the bench, "you were given a position of trust and responsibility. You used that position to systematically defraud the company that employed you, to betray the family that welcomed you, and to enrich yourself at others' expense." Daniel stood there, head bowed. His lawyer had advised him to look remorseful. He was trying. Failing, but trying. "The prosecution has recommended 20 years. Your defense has asked for leniency, citing your lack of prior criminal history and your willingness to cooperate." Judge Reeves paused. "However, cooperation that only comes after being caught demonstrates no true remorse. It demonstrates only regret at being caught." I saw Daniel's jaw tighten. Still couldn't quite accept that he'd lost. "I hereby sentence you to 12 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Additionally, you will pay restitution of $1,047,000 to Coleman's Auto Care, plus court costs and penalties." The gavel came down. Final. Absolute. Daniel turned to look at Rebecca. She stared straight ahead, face impassive. Then his eyes found mine. I met his gaze steadily. No anger, no satisfaction, just acknowledgement that this is what consequences look like. The marshals led him away. He didn't fight, didn't protest, just walked out of the courtroom with his head down, everything he'd built, everything he'd stolen gone. In the hallway afterward, reporters swarmed. I gave a brief statement. Justice has been served. Coleman's Auto Care will continue operating with integrity and transparency. That's all I have to say. Rebecca and I walked out of the courthouse together. The late afternoon sun was warm on our faces. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Tired, relieved, ready to move on." "Me too." The financial recovery took time. The government had seized Daniel's offshore accounts, the Malibu house, everything they could trace back to stolen funds. We eventually recovered about $600,000. Not everything, but enough. I officially postponed my retirement. Told the board I'd stay on for at least 2 more years to ensure stability. Teresa, as CFO, was doing excellent work. I started grooming her for a bigger role. "Irving, are you thinking what I think you're thinking?" she asked one day. "If you're thinking that you'd make an excellent CEO when I actually do retire, then yes." She laughed. "I'm thinking VP first. Maybe work my way up." Smart. I like smart. Rebecca moved back into my house temporarily, said she needed time to figure out what came next. Her design business was thriving. Turned out removing the toxic influence from her life did wonders for her creativity. We fell into a comfortable routine. Dinner together a few times a week. Weekend mornings working on the Corvette. Slowly rebuilding trust. One Saturday morning, about 6 weeks after the sentencing, I was in the garage polishing the Stingray's chrome. The car was nearly finished, just some final detail work remaining. Rebecca came in carrying 2 cups of coffee, handed me one. "Looking good," she said, running her hand along the hood. "Getting there. Should be road ready in a month or so." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Dad, I'm sorry. For not believing you. For defending him. For making you feel like you couldn't trust me with the truth. We've been over this, sweetheart. You don't need to keep apologizing." "I know. But I need to say it until I believe you've forgiven me." I set down the polishing cloth, looked at my daughter, really looked at her. She was stronger now, harder in some ways, but in a good way, the kind of strength that comes from surviving something terrible. "There's nothing to forgive. You trusted someone you loved. That's not a character flaw. That's being human." She smiled, eyes watering. "When did you get so wise? When I had to learn the hard way that the people you trust most can sometimes hurt you the worst? But also that some things, family, integrity, the truth, those are worth fighting for, no matter the cost." We worked on the car together in comfortable silence. Outside, I could hear birds singing, the sound of my neighbor mowing his lawn, normal, peaceful sounds. "You know what I learned?" Rebecca said suddenly. "What's that?" "Trust is like this car. You can break it, damage it badly. But if you're willing to put in the work, if you care enough to fix what's broken piece by piece, you can restore it, maybe even make it better than it was before." I smiled. That's exactly right. 2 months later, I took the Corvette out for its first real drive since the restoration. Rebecca came with me. We drove out of Houston, found some open road, and just flew. The engine purred perfectly. The steering was tight and responsive. Everything worked exactly as it should. "This is incredible, Dad," Rebecca shouted over the wind. I grinned. Felt younger than I had in years. When we got back, the car gleaming in my garage once again, I realized something. The restoration hadn't just been about the Corvette. It had been about everything. The company, my relationship with Rebecca, my own sense of self-worth. Daniel had tried to tear it all down, but piece by piece I'd rebuilt it. Stronger, better, true. A few weeks after that, Teresa came to me with news. "Daniel's appealing the sentence. His lawyers are claiming judicial bias. Will it work?" Robert says no. The evidence was too solid, the trial too clean. He's grasping at straws. I nodded, unsurprised. Let him try. He'll fail. Same as he failed at everything else. "You know," Teresa said carefully, "a lot of people would have just confronted him privately, made him repay the money, fired him quietly, avoided all the publicity. And he would have done it again to someone else, or claimed I forced him out unfairly, or convinced Rebecca I was lying." I shook my head. "No, He needed to face real consequences. Public consequences. That's the only way this ends right. She smiled. I'm glad you're staying on. The company needs you. The company needs both of us. And in 2 years, when I hand you the CEO position, it'll need you even more. I'll be ready. I believed her. That evening, I sat in my garage one more time. The Corvette was perfect now. Restoration complete. But I wasn't in a hurry to sell it or even drive it much. It had served its purpose, given me something to focus on, to rebuild, to make whole again. Rebecca joined me, bringing dinner. We ate on workbenches, talking about her new projects, my plans for the company, everything and nothing. Dad, she said as she was leaving, I'm proud of you, for not letting him destroy what you built, for having the courage to do what was right even when it was hard. I'm proud of you too, sweetheart, for surviving this, for being stronger than you knew you could be. After she left, I sat alone with my thoughts. Thought about Daniel in federal prison, probably still believing he was the victim in all this. Thought about the $1 million stolen and mostly recovered. Thought about Coleman's auto care, stable and growing under honest leadership. And I thought about trust, how it's built slowly over decades of consistent action, how it can be shattered in moments of greed and betrayal, and how, with enough patience and work, it can sometimes be restored. Not the same as before, but maybe better, stronger. Forged in fire and proven through adversity, the Corvette sat in my garage, chrome gleaming under the lights, a symbol of what can be rebuilt, with care, patience, and dedication, just like everything else worth having in life. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.